Well, thanks again for joining us today. My name is Jasper with SCORE Maine. I'm joined by Tom Kittredge of the Maine Technology Institute here to talk about what the Maine Technology Institute could do for your small business. If you didn't know, SCORE is a business partner of a resource partner of the Small Business Administration. We help clients from all stages of the business cycle from pre-start to exit. Thanks again for Tom and the Maine Technology Institute for making today's workshop possible. If you have any questions, feel free to queue them up in the chat or use the raise hand function and we can have you speak. Otherwise, Tom, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me. My name is Tom Kittredge. I'm a senior investment officer at the Maine Technology Institute. We generally refer to ourselves as MTI, so I'll be using that today. I've been doing these presentations to SCORE for the past probably 3 years now, and they're always really great conversations. Generally, my actual presentation itself takes around 30 minutes or so, depending on how fast I talk, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answer at the end. So I'll kick it off. Okay. Jasper, is that showing up okay?
Looks great.
Awesome. Great. Well, like I said, so I am with the Maine Technology Institute, MTI. And for those who might not be aware, and let me get to the next slide. MTI, we are a nonprofit, primarily funded by the state of Maine, and actually we were created by the state of Maine in the late 90s. And our mission is really to support innovation as a means of creating economic impact in Maine. So the hope really being from MTI's side that by supporting businesses who are engaged in substantial innovation, that in turn will create positive economic outcomes for Maine and its people. So by that I mean, supporting businesses to grow their innovation and in turn, hopefully scale the business and create good paying jobs and grow revenues and have other forms of economic impact in the state. So really, again, innovation as a means to economic impact. So you'll hear me come back to that theme of innovation and economic impact a lot in this presentation, because those are really kind of the two key pillars of what MTI is looking to achieve. So again, I mentioned that we were founded in the late 90s. And the reason that MTI was created, along with our sister organization, the Maine Venture Fund, is that at the time, Maine was really lagging behind most of the country. I think we were 49th in the country in terms of investing in research and development and innovation broadly. And the legislature at the time, as well as the governor, felt that for Maine to be successful entering the 21st century, that we really wanted to invest in the sorts of businesses that have the potential to scale. And they identified 7 technology sectors that they really wanted to focus on, that they perceived as being really key to Maine's future economic success. So those are still the 7 sectors that MTI is focused on funding. I'm going to go through them in a moment. But you can see as of 2022, MTI had invested more than $300 million in Maine-based organizations through a variety of programs. So we've been really fortunate to have some pretty profound impact in the state of Maine over our 25 odd years of being around. So MTI, something I should highlight is we're primarily known for funding, and I'm going to speak today mostly to the funding side of things. So we do grants and loans and equity investments. We do have some other services we offer as well. We have some pro bono consulting services we offer. We also have some support for companies that are looking to apply for federal grants. But today I'm going to focus on our funding opportunities, and specifically something we call the Business Innovation Funding Program, which is really our core funding program for businesses. But to kind of highlight the scope of MTI funding in terms of what stage your business needs to be at to be eligible for MTI funding, the answer is that we're incredibly flexible. So we work with companies who are very early stage, who have an idea and hopefully have validated that idea in terms of conducting some customer discovery and market research, but might not even have a prototype or a minimum viable product, all the way through to companies that have been in existence for decades, who are generating millions of dollars in revenue, but maybe have something new they're looking to do that's innovative, and they're looking to scale that up and seeking MTI support. So we're very broad in terms of the stage of the business. With that said, the type of funding you're eligible for and the quantity of that funding is going to vary depending on kind of how developed your business is. And I'll go into that in addition momentarily. So I really today this is going to focus specifically on our business innovation funding program. I will at the end of the presentation talk about some of the other programs we offer in very high level detail. But today, just know that the majority of this is on business innovation funding. So that is grants, loans, and equity investments to businesses to bolster Maine's innovation economy. So we're really looking to support businesses that are doing something substantially differentiated from what's already out there on the market. So that can mean that your product is innovative, or your service. It can also mean that you're creating it in an innovative way. So maybe you have a very innovative manufacturing methodology, or maybe you're using a really new innovative material, but you have to make the linkage for it to be eligible for MTI funding between how what you're doing is innovative and how that creates some sort of real competitive advantage for you essentially in the marketplace that in turn will allow your business to grow. So the innovation has to be kind of core to what you're looking to do and give you some sort of competitive advantage. But that's what MTI's funding is really seeking to support, is that innovation. So in terms of key requirements to be eligible for the Business Innovation Funding Program, I'm going to go through all of these in greater depth in the next few slides. So at a very high level, shared goals, which essentially means a shared desire to grow your business here in the state of Maine and create economic impact, which is aligned with MTI's mission. Innovative and forward thinking, so your business must have an innovation. Maine-based organization, so we're funded primarily through Maine taxpayers, so our mission is really to support businesses based here in Maine. And I'll go into more depth. There's a couple exceptions around that. 7 targeted technology sectors, and then lastly, the one-to-one access to matching funds, which is a requirement for all MTI funding. So to go into that shared goals piece of it again, so economic impact potential, really what we're looking to see is businesses that are looking to scale in Maine. And we look at a number of different ways to assess economic impact. Definitely probably the most kind of key component is the creation of quality jobs. So well-paying jobs, ideally a living wage or higher, that, either retention. So if you have an innovation that's going to allow you to keep your workforce, generally that's for larger companies that already have a number of employees. For smaller companies, we're really looking to see how your innovation is going to allow your business to grow in such a way that you're going to create additional well-paying jobs. On growth and acceleration of revenues, so seeing your business scaling the amount of revenues it's bringing in. Attraction and leveraging of additional capital or other investments. So is there an opportunity for you to go out and fundraise, bring in outside investment? And then lastly, indirect economic impact, which is kind of a catch-all phrase for all the other forms of economic impact a business can have. So are you working with a Maine-based supply chain? Are you partnering with other Maine-based companies? Is your innovation something that is going to impact not just your business, but other businesses in the state? And then also, beyond economic impact directly, are there other kind of benefits to Maine's people in terms of social or environmental impacts that are positive? And that kind of makes the entire impact story. So Maine-based organizations. So this is somewhat self-explanatory. We're looking to support businesses based in Maine, but it's also can be a bit nebulous for larger organizations that maybe have employees outside of the state as well. Maybe it's a founding team where one person is based in Maine and another person is based elsewhere. Or maybe it's a business that's outside of Maine that's looking to relocate to the state of Maine. So we use the term, and I see Beth, you raised a hand. So right after I finish this, I'm happy to take your question. But we use the term predominantly Maine-based. And really what that means is we're looking to support businesses that are more based in Maine than anywhere else. So you have to be able to kind of make a credible case that your organization is predominantly based in Maine. So we look at things like, where are the founders based? Where's the kind of C-suite, the executives, where are they based? How many employees do you have in Maine compared to elsewhere? Where do you publicly identify, on your website? Where are you registered? So we kind of take all these factors into account when making that assessment. If it's a business that's not based in Maine, but is planning to relocate to Maine, we allow them to apply for MTI funding. So, they're welcome to submit an application if they're sincere about planning to kind of reestablish themselves in Maine. But for any MTI funding to actually go out the door, they need to prove that they've fully relocated or, relocated enough to make that predominantly based in Maine criteria be met. So I saw Beth had a hand raised. Beth, did you have a question?
She did not.
Oh, she did not. Okay.
I
Great.
think I'm gonna have to say that word. Tom, would you share with, would you share with,
All right. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Occasional disruptions here.
Yeah,
But
no
go
worries at
keep
all.
going, Tom.
Okay. So let me see. So innovation. So innovation, again, this is a term that can be uh, you know, different in the eyes of different beholders. You know, and it's contextual really based on the organization, based on the sector that they're in, based on the stage of the business. You know, every kind of case is a little different in terms of what's innovative. But really, again, what we're looking to see is what are you doing that's meaningfully differentiated from what your competitors are doing? And how does that provide you with a competitive advantage that's going to allow you to scale your business and create economic impact? So again, you really need to be able to make that linkage between what you're doing that's innovative and the opportunity for your business to grow and create economic impact in the state of Maine. So it can't kind of be an innovation just around the edges. You know, it can't just be, you know, your competitors produce something in the color blue and you're going to make it in the color red. Like MTI is looking to see something that's relatively substantially differentiated from what's out there. And again, it doesn't necessarily need to be that the product or service you're offering is innovative in and of itself, but you need to demonstrate that there's some innovation core to your business. So again, I use the example of manufacturing. You know, we support businesses who their product isn't innovative, but the way they produce it is innovative, and they're able to produce it using an innovative method that allows them to offer their product at a much cheaper price. Which again, that's their competitive advantage, is that they're offering it at a much cheaper price because they have this innovative manufacturing method. Or you know, they're creating something using bioplastic. So it's a common item, but they're using a different material that's more environmentally friendly, and that's something that their customers are excited about and are willing to pay more for. And as a result, that's the innovation, is the use of a different material. But again, you know, creating that demonstration that it's something that provides you a competitive advantage that, you know, your customers really see the value of, and that's going to allow you to grow your business. So things we look at kind of when assessing innovation are customer discovery. So the idea of, have you gone out and spoken to your existing customers or prospective customers about your innovation, and are they excited by it? Market research. So have you been able to do some research into the market to affirm that what you're doing is actually innovative? So that means partially looking at your competition, understanding the competitive landscape, and again, understanding kind of what are you doing that's different. And then review of existing IP. So, you know, are there patents already in existence that are replicating what you're looking to do? And I'll say that this is, you know, customer discovery, market research, and review of existing IP. Those are all great things to talk to your SCORE mentor about. They've been really helpful to a number of MTI portfolio companies in terms of taking advantage of that. So targeted technology sectors. So these are the 7 sectors that MTI has been tasked with by the state of Maine to support. You know, they were identified in the late 90s. I would say they're still relevant today, and something that's been very helpful for on the MTI side of things is that the legislature, when they created MTI, did not necessarily define these sectors very specifically, which has been very helpful, because in certain sectors, for example, information technology, you know, the nature of that sector has evolved massively over the past 26 years. You know, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these things, they weren't really on the scene at that time. So it's been helpful that they've been fairly broad. And MTI still tries to take that broad-based approach when defining our sectors. So we try to be as inclusive as possible when supporting businesses who could potentially fall within one or more of these. We often do support businesses that, you know, can credibly claim that they're in multiple of these sectors. But you have to be able to demonstrate that either your organization or the innovation is in one of the following sectors. And the last thing I'll say is the reason that or exists is because sometimes we support companies who are not, you know, their core business wouldn't be considered in one of these sectors. So I like to use the example of like a hospitality-based organization that has some sort of really innovative platform that they're using that's, you know, really dramatically improving the experience for their customers, and in turn leading to you know, them being able to grow their business. So even though hospitality isn't one of these sectors, the fact that they have an information technology product that innovation itself falls within MTI's one of our technology sectors. So access to matching funds. So this is true not only of the Business Innovation Funding Program, but of any MTI program, which is that we're required by our statute with the state of Maine to have at least one-to-one match for any MTI funding. So essentially what that means is when you come to MTI and you're looking for support on your innovation. So again, MTI is looking for an applicant to propose a specific project that'll move their innovation forward. We're looking to see that to fund that project that will move your innovation forward, that you have at least one-to-one match for the amount of funding you're requesting from MTI. So if you are coming to MTI and you say, hey, I have a $50,000 project in mind that is going to help move my innovation forward because I'm going to do all this product development, MTI could provide up to half of that, so $25,000. So the other half would have to come from the business itself. So we're fairly flexible as to what the matching funds, where those come from. They can come from the founders themselves. They can come from other investors. If the business is generating revenues, they can come from your revenues. They can come from other grants. Essentially, you just need to demonstrate to MTI that you have the funds in your bank account that are necessary to pay for the other half of the project that MTI is not supporting. So essentially, it's another way to think of matching funds is essentially cost share on the project. So MTI will chip in part to the project, and the expectation is that you as a business will also chip in part towards the project. For smaller projects, so generally for MTI requests of up to about 30,000 from us in terms of grant funding, we can accept a portion of the match as the unpaid labor of the founders, so also referred to as sweat equity. So if you are coming to MTI, you're a really early stage business, and you're going to be investing a lot of your time on the project you're proposing to MTI, we can take kind of the value of your labor as part of the match. Generally, that's not more than like 30% of the request. And again, it depends on the size. Basically, the more you're requesting from MTI, the higher the proportion of cash matches that we're seeking to see. I should also mention here that the amount of MTI funding that you're eligible for is also influenced by the stage of the business. So earlier stage businesses are going to be eligible for maybe up to $30,000 from MTI, whereas later stage businesses are eligible for potentially up to more funding. Which brings me to my next slide. So this idea that MTI funding scales with you. So really the hope of MTI funding is that we're providing support to a business as they grow from really early stage all the way through being commercialized and growing in Maine. So typically what that looks like is a business coming to MTI, getting a smaller amount of funding, so up to $25,000 to $30,000 in grant funding to advance a project that helps move their innovation forward, hopefully being successful with that project, and then coming back to MTI for a follow-on project and getting more funding that continues to advance the business, and then potentially coming back for a third project and a fourth project. So really kind of advancing the innovation, being able to show that you're achieving the goals of the project, and then being eligible to come back for follow-on funding. We have a cumulative lifetime grant limit of 100,000 per business. So that basically means that your business is at most ever going to receive $100,000 from MTI through the Business Innovation Funding Program in grant funding. So that might come out in chunks of 30,000, or maybe 4 chunks of 25,000, or maybe it's a 30,000 and then a 70,000. It can be broken up in different ways. But basically, once you hit 100,000, that's the maximum amount of business innovation funding a business can receive through its kind of life. We do offer other forms of funding as well, typically in the form of either a loan or an equity investment. Those generally are available for later stage companies, generally that are already commercialized, that have sales, that have a really compelling economic impact case, so they can demonstrate that there's a real opportunity for them to keep growing and creating economic impact in Maine. And that needs some additional funds to keep growing. And so they're either seeking a loan from MTI, or they're doing an investment round where they have a number of investors coming aboard, and they're looking for MTI to join as a potential investor. And funding for those sorts of vehicles can range anywhere from $50,000 all the way up to $300,000. But again, that's not grant. That would be a loan or an equity investment. So in terms of the process, so the way that this would work, so from the point where you're like, you know what, I might be interested in MTI funding, I think my business could potentially be eligible, I'd like to talk to somebody. The first step would be to submit an interest form via our website. So if you go onto MTI's website, it's www.mainetechnology.org, and you find the Business Innovation Funding Program, which you can find under the Explore Funding drop-down menu. There's a link to submit an interest form via our website. And essentially what that does is that sets you up to talk to myself or one of my colleagues who will kind of work with you to determine whether or not you're likely to be eligible for MTI support. I'd encourage you to review the website prior to submitting an interest form, because that'll give you some more information as to whether or not you're likely to be eligible. But if you think there's a chance that you could be eligible, then I'd encourage you to go ahead and submit an interest form and speak with one of us. And we'll help you assess, again, whether or not it's likely your application will be successful. And if we determine that it does make sense for you to apply, we'll then send you all the application template materials. There's a scope of work document, which basically is a document where you would detail a project that MTI would be supporting, a budget document where you detail kind of what costs are associated with that project and how are you going to pay for it. So how much are you seeking from MTI and what are you bringing in terms of matching funds? And then lastly, application. So, the application form asks you to speak to what's the economic impact potential of the business, who's on the team. So that can both be the team members themselves, but also, and by team members, I mean like employees and founders, but also any outside mentors or advisors. Your innovation. So what are you doing and why is it innovative? What problem is it solving? The market opportunity, and then lastly, your business model. And then once your application is submitted, the turnaround to get an answer back is generally anywhere from 1 to 4 months. Typically these days, it's around 2 months. MTI funding is first come, first serve. So there's no specific application deadline. It's a rolling deadline. And we review applications in the order that they're submitted. So the processing time is partly contingent just on how many applications are in process ahead of yours. But generally these days, it's around 2 months. And then if your application is approved, ongoing reporting requirements as detailed in the funding contract. So for grant funding, typically all that entails is a final report at the end of the project where you summarize how the project went, whether or not you met all your project goals, how much you ended up spending compared to the original budget proposal, how much matching funds you spent, and really just kind of wrap up the project and make sure it went well. For loans and equity investments, we have some additional reporting requirements as well, where basically companies have to report quarterly how their financials are doing and how the business is doing overall. So when is a good time to contact MTI? So when is a good time to submit that interest form request via our website to talk to somebody? So these are some of the things you should probably be prepared to speak about prior to contacting MTI. So the problem they are addressing and point to supporting evidence. So the problem can be either a problem that your customers are facing that you're helping solve through your innovation, or hypothetically could also be kind of an internal business problem that you've developed an innovative way to solve. So again, taking that manufacturing example, if you've developed a very innovative manufacturing technique that allows you to substantially lower your costs or increase your throughput, that would be the problem you're trying to solve and you have an innovation. But again, you'll want to speak to both why is there a problem and also what is your solution and how is it innovative and how is it differentiated from existing options. Customer discovery you have conducted to date. So have you gone out and spoken to prospective customers? And ideally, these prospective customers wouldn't be like your family or your friends, but they'd be real strangers to validate that there's actual interest in your product, that you have a real value proposition. Again, this is an area that I've found that SCORE can be really helpful if you're not really sure how to go about that. I definitely recommend utilizing SCORE as a resource for planning customer discovery. Team. So again, that's not just yourself and your co-founders, but it's also anybody else involved in bringing the project to fruition and helping grow your business. So that can be advisors, mentors. If you're planning to utilize contractors or consultants, you'd speak to them. Competitive landscape and market opportunity. So again, who's your competition and what's the market opportunity? So what's the size of the market and how much of it are you hoping to capture? Again, that's another area that I think SCORE can be really incredibly helpful if you're not really sure how to go about approaching that. And then lastly, resources you'll need to move the innovation forward. So, that's money. So how much money are you going to need to keep growing your business and keep growing this innovation? But it's also any other resources you need in terms of personnel, in terms of equipment, anything else that you need to kind of move the innovation forward. So that's kind of my whole summary on the Business Innovation Funding Program, and I'm happy to take any questions. I know that was a lot of information that I kind of just poured on you. Just before we get to that, I did want to just quickly mention some other MTI programs that we have, just so folks are aware of them. So the other program that's probably most relevant if you're looking for funding and are a for-profit business is our Maine Entrepreneurial Resource Corp. So in a lot of ways, the Maine Entrepreneurial Resource Corp is very similar to the Business Innovation Funding Program in that it's intended to help businesses move their innovation forward. But what's specific about Merck is that it's specifically for hiring consultants. So if you are looking to hire a Maine-based consultant to do a discrete short-term consulting project, and that can be anything from helping you develop HR best practices to, hiring an IP attorney to file for a patent, to, hiring a marketing firm to do some marketing materials, to, hiring an engineer to do product development, anything like that. Merck is intended to help you find a consultant. So we have a database of consultants in the state that we're able to connect people with and then help you pay for that. So it's a great way to supplement the funding that's available through the Business Innovation Funding Program. I mentioned that $100,000 grant cap limit through Business Innovation Funding. Merck doesn't count towards that. So it's a great way to kind of extend how much funding you can get from MTI in the form of grants by utilizing both Merck and the Business Innovation Funding Program. And again, it's also just a great way to get connected with a consultant if you don't already have one in mind. If you do have a consultant in mind and they're Maine-based, they can get added to the database, and then you can work with them and still be funded through the Merck program. And I see Thomas has a hand raised, so let me just quickly run through these other three, and then I'm happy to take that question. So event sponsorship. So that's for, this is generally less relevant for for-profit businesses. This typically is like nonprofits or that would typically get event funding, though not always. But really it's for sponsorship for events that celebrate, champion, and educate Maine's innovation economy. So, for folks who maybe attended Startup Maine Week, that was sponsored by MTI. A lot of the things like Greenlight Maine, or the Top Gun program through the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs, some of the work that SCORE does, those are all things that MTI provides some sponsorship for. But they're typically things that are directly supporting entrepreneurs in Maine through events. Federal funding technical assistance program. So the federal government, different agencies have a lot of grant programs available to help businesses who are engaged in research and development and are taking some big risks in their respective sectors, potentially tap into federal funding support. So if you are in the agriculture space and you're doing something very innovative and there's research and development involved, you might be able to apply for some federal grant funding through the Department of Agriculture. And those two programs are called SBIR and STTR. And MTI has a team of internal kind of experts on those two programs who are available to help Maine-based companies who are interested in applying for federal funding and getting their application to a place where it's pretty strong. They won't write the application for you, but they'll give you a lot of guidance and tips on how to present a really strong grant application. And then lastly, entrepreneurial support organization funding. So we do offer funding to ecosystem partners in the state who are, providing support to the sorts of businesses that MTI looks to support. So, we've given funding to the Rue Institute, for example, or again, SCORE is a great example. Dirigo Labs, Maine Center for Entrepreneurs, Upstart Maine. So there's a variety of different support programs in the state of Maine that look to support entrepreneurs, and MTI tries to support those organizations. So that's all I've got. So I'd be happy to take questions. I know Thomas had one. So Thomas, why don't you kick us off? Then I'm happy to take any others.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. A lot of innovations are really just like, in some cases, proof of concepts to validate viability and feasibility before you can really know if there's a revenue generation or a cost benefit. How do you guys think about that with applications? Like, very specifically, I'm a cheesemaker and I'm thinking I would like to introduce robotics into very specific parts of my cheesemaking process to make it safer for my staff. I don't know if that's really going to work, but it's a hypothesis I have, and I need funding to test it. So how
Yep.
should you think about that kind of approach when applying for these grants?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so MTI definitely exists to help, we have a high risk tolerance because we understand that not every innovation is going to work out and not every business is ultimately going to succeed. So definitely, like you said, the proof of concept, MTI very frequently provides early stage grants for proof of concept. If the business can demonstrate that there is a reasonable likelihood of success and that it is innovative. So, would still be looking to see, the more information, supporting evidence you can provide that if it works, it'll be really game changer for your business. That it has been successful in other areas, maybe not cheese making per se, but if you can point to kind of analogous examples in other relevant sectors, if you can support to the fact that you have a strong team or are going to be able to put together a strong team who have the necessary expertise to implement robotics into cheese making. So, kind of just trying to minimize the risk as much as possible while still recognizing that it is a risk and that you need to get to proof of concept, I guess is what I would say to that. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah. And then I'm sure you share this at some point, but a link to schedule time with one of your staff members to discuss this in more detail, I think would be, there it is. Perfect.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so go to the Get Start. Actually, I think it's now called Explore Funding. But again, if you go to that business innovation funding program, which is the one that's probably most pertinent for that, and then hit the interest form link, that'll set up a time to talk to myself or one of my colleagues.
Okay, cheers. Thanks, Tom. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, we had one in the chat from Hari. Hari says, I would like some more information on the development loans and equity investments, process requirements, expectations, stage of company. That might be a good thing to talk to one of the team members on. I don't know how in depth we could get here in today's session, but if there's anything you'd like to share.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think that it's very much contextual for the business, but I can provide a high level summary. So typically, but not always, the sorts of businesses that are going after loans or equity from MTI have already maxed out their MTI grant funding. For the businesses, it's great to get as much funding as possible where there's no expectation of repayment and they're not diluting their ownership. And then for MTI, it's kind of a good way to build a relationship with the business and come to understand the core business model. So often, I would say the vast majority of the time, we've already given grant funding to a business. They've often maxed out their grant funding, but they still need funding to keep scaling. But in terms of how we think about those two things, so in terms of debt, we think about it to an extent like a bank would. So we want to feel confident that there's a reasonable chance of being repaid on the loan that we're giving your business. So generally, that means would want to feel confident about your financial projections and your cash flows, and feel confident that you're positioned to repay us. We do have probably a higher risk appetite than your average bank, but that you still have to be able to make a compelling case that it's likely that you'll be able to repay us. And a couple of things to note about MTI loans. They are very attractive. I think we charge a 5% interest rate. Generally, we don't take personal guarantees and we don't require collateral, which can be really compelling for businesses. But again, would want your business to be able to make the case that you're likely to be able to repay the loan that you're getting from MTI. So typically what that looks like is your business is already generating revenues, that you have some sales to point to, and you can make a compelling case that your cash flows are such that you'll be able to repay the monthly payments on the loan. And then in terms of equity, we look at it like a VC would to an extent, with the additional kind of requirement of looking to see economic impact potential in Maine. So ultimately what we'd look at for an equity investment is we want to feel relatively confident that the business is going to grow, and ultimately there's going to be an exit that will lead to MTI getting our funding back that we can then put back into the state of Maine. So would want to understand the valuation of the company, the terms that are being offered. When it comes to equity, we would not be a lead investor, so we're looking for somebody else to kind of take the lead on the equity round and putting together the term sheet and coming to the valuation. And then you bring that to MTI, and our equity team would take a look and kind of determine whether or not it seems like an appealing opportunity for us. And then if it does, then would move forward with having you submit all the materials that you need. I will say for both equity and for a loan, The matching funds requirement is still in place, and the fact you need to put forth a project proposal is still in place. So if you're seeking a loan or seeking equity funding from MTI, would still want you to say what you're going to use that money for, what sort of project are you going to do, and how is it going to kind of help your business grow, and show that you have matching funds.
Good info there. Dan asks, oh yeah,
go ahead. Oh, no,
if
I
you had
saw
anything,
Art's question, but I saw that Dan's question is above. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Dan Peabody asks, can an SBIR grant funds be used as the matching portion for an MTI grant?
Absolutely, yes. So federal funds, which are all SBIR, STTR funds, can absolutely be used. It's a great use. It's a great way to get matching funds because, you know, it's grant funding, matching grant funding. So they definitely can be used. You need to demonstrate for MTI funds to go out, you need to demonstrate that you've received the SBIR funds or the STTR funds. But yes, they absolutely can be used as match. We've had a number of MTI companies who have used their SBIR, STTR awards to match an MTI request. The one other thing I'll mention about matching funds is, so the only types of funds that aren't eligible for to count as match are other state of Maine funded entities funding. So the most common area where that can be a little tricky is the Maine Venture Fund, which is also funded through the state of Maine. So if somebody gets Maine Venture Fund funding, they can't use it to match an MTI request because essentially it's using Maine taxpayer money to match Maine taxpayer money, which we can't do.
Mhm.
But with the exception of that, we're fairly flexible as to what can be used as matching funds, and definitely federal grants can be used.
Yeah. Main Venture Fund, also a friend of SCORE, Joe Powers, who also presents on some workshops for us. Anyway, Art Bell asks or says, I will soon be looking for Maine-based SEO experience. Do you have any leads in this, or should you put a request through the link in the description here? SCORE here, we may have some resources I could share with you, but Tom, if you have anything.
What I would say is I definitely recommend checking out that Maine Entrepreneurial Resource Corps program, which is the one I mentioned towards the end of the presentation, which is assistance on consulting expertise, where we have a database of Maine-based consultants, and some of them definitely are, you know, SEO experts. And again, you can also get help paying for those that expertise. So that would be my recommendation, Art, is to go on our website and go to the Maine Entrepreneurial Resource Corps page. And just like with business innovation funding, you can set up a time to chat with my colleague who runs that specific program.
Awesome. Makingo asks, how can MTI help with market discovery?
Yeah, great question. So again, that is an area where I would say SCORE can be immensely useful. So I guess it depends on what exactly you need doing. I think ideally, a lot of market research and customer discovery shouldn't necessarily cost you anything. You know, you should be able to go out and speak to prospective customers without having to necessarily spend money. And hopefully there's a good amount of publicly available market data out there that you shouldn't need to pay for. So MTI generally likes to see some degree of market research and customer discovery already conducted before we fund a request. But again, you know, it can be a little daunting to be like, oh, I don't know how to go about doing market research for the first time, or I don't know how to connect with my prospective customers. And that, again, is a really great way to utilize SCORE, is what I would say.
Yeah, great time to plug. If you don't already have a SCORE mentor, you can get one for free on score.org. You just enter your zip code and a little bit of information like this that you're looking for help with. We help with market research all the time, a very common topic that our mentors help with. Christy asks, can the event sponsorship be used to support a competition that would help craft beverage makers improve their product? Marketing, promotional support would go a long way.
Potentially, yeah. So my boss, Brian Whitney, who's the president of MTI, he's the one who ultimately makes the decision on event sponsorships. So basically the case you need to make to him, Christy, is you know, how is your competition going to boost Maine's innovation economy, champion Maine's innovation economy? So you'd want to kind of make a strong connection to craft beverage makers, how there's going to be some innovation component to what they're looking to do. But that definitely could potentially be eligible. So the way to go about that is to go on our website and select event sponsorship, where it has a more detailed run through of the criteria for sponsorship. and submit a request, and that'll just connect you with him. And sponsorship's nice because it's a pretty simple process. You have a conversation with him, and he kind of assesses whether or not you're likely to be eligible for the event and how much funding would be available. So I would suggest just going on the website and submitting a sponsorship request and connecting with him.
Yeah, and as someone with a foot in the craft beer industry myself, I'd love to see the outcome of the event. So we'll keep up with it. Anyway, Alexandra says or asks, is assistance by MTI with application for SBI or SBIR and STTR relevant only for the agricultural startups and companies, or for other companies from other industries as well, for example, aerospace?
Yeah, great question. No, I was just using agriculture as an example. MTI provides support for any application that would be going through the SBIR and STTR process, regardless of what federal agency it is. So if the federal agency offers either SBIR or STTR funding opportunities, MTI would provide support for that. And on our website, that would be to connect with them. That would be going to our federal, I think it's called the Technical Assistance Program, actually, on the website. And that would connect you to our experts who could assist with that. So yeah, absolutely. Aerospace would be one of the ones that we could assist with.
Awesome. Sam asks, can MTI provide support connecting organizations to experienced individuals in Maine, such as engineers? Possibly, I'm reading into maybe a hiring context there.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the nature of what you're looking to do, Sam. Again, that the Maine Entrepreneurial Resource Corps program, great for connecting your organization with consultants. If you're looking for, a consultant to do some engineering work, that could be a great use of Merck. Beyond that, if you're looking to actually hire an engineer full time, that's not necessarily something that we personally do. I would recommend connecting with Startup Maine. They have some good connections there. LiveWork Maine is another organization. They maintain a job board, so they would be another good one to connect with. But MTI wouldn't, beyond consulting specifically, wouldn't necessarily have those connections.
Gotcha. Dan asks, does MTI still use the viral assessment matrix process?
Great question, Dan. Yes. So for those who aren't aware, viral assessment is, and I used to have this in the presentation, I don't actually know where that slide went, but basically it's a tool that's been developed by one of our partners, an organization called Village Capital. And basically what the viral assessment is it's a chart. It's got 8 columns and 7 or 8 rows. And basically it assesses how far along a business is in its growth development process in 8 different areas. So I'm trying to remember exactly what they are, but team, product, market, business model, value proposition, sale or customer, I might have already mentioned that, exit. And basically where it is your business would be assessed in each of those 8 categories as to how far along it is. And that's something that MTI does use still to help assess how far along a business is and what level of funding they might be eligible for. So a business that's earlier on the viral matrix, and again, if you Google MTI viral, that should show up, that chart, for anybody who wants to see. It's a tool for us to kind of assess when we're speaking with you for the first time, how far along is your business and what level of MTI funding are you likely to be eligible for as a result? So that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up, Dan.
Yeah, really great information. Makengo asks, does MTI work with import and export programs, like an import-export business?
Yeah, potentially. It depends on the nature of the business. And again, the question of innovation. I would definitely recommend another great resource in the state that would definitely be relevant for that is the Maine International Trade Center. They use the acronym MITC or MITC, but the Maine International Trade Center is definitely, if you're looking to do work internationally, so import-export program would very much be that. I would definitely connect with them. They have a tremendous amount of resources for companies that are selling abroad. So they would definitely be an organization I'd recommend connecting with. Does SCORE do any work with them?
Yeah, once a year during the import week in Portland, our mentor, Chelani Weedus, who has import-export experience, does a talk. I believe this year it was digital. I don't know if it was recorded, unfortunately, but it's been in person in the past as well. So we do occasionally work with them.
Great. So hopefully SCORE could connect you with Mitzi if you wanted to connect with them. And I definitely think that would be a good place to start.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? looks like we're through the chat. In the meantime, if people are still thinking of them or writing them up, Tom, thanks for always being a supporter of SCORE and helping us out with this presentation. It's invaluable information for everyone who attends. And one more plug for a SCORE mentor if you don't already have one. It's free, completely confidential, and we're here for any part of the business cycle. You get one for free at score.org. Alexandra does ask, as I'm letting people cue some up here, could we have a look at a funding agreement before applying for the grant?
Yeah, absolutely, Alexandra. So we have kind of standard language that we use for our grants, and then slightly tailored language also for loans and equity investments. For equity, it would go off the term sheet, but we might have like a sidecar contract. But yes, you're welcome to look at that. The grant contract, essentially the key things to know are, basically what it says is you're going to adhere to the spirit of the project that you're getting support on. So if MTI says, yeah, we'll fund this project, our expectation is that you pursue the project. It's okay if some things change during the course of the project. That's the nature of being an early stage startup, and MTI is generally pretty flexible, but you'd want to notify MTI if you're making any kind of big changes to the grant or to the project. And the other kind of part that's most relevant is it says that your business is going to stay in Maine for at least 5 years after receiving the MTI funding, and that if you do leave the state of Maine within that time frame, that you'll repay the grant. I believe that's what that language is. But so that's kind of what kind of the key elements of the grant contract. But you're welcome to have a look at that. You could speak with an investment officer, and they would be happy to provide you with our standard template, which is what we use for any grant funding.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure that'd be a great resource for anyone interested. Well, if there's any other questions, I'll continue the ending spiel here, and while they come up, I'll read them. Otherwise, I do want to thank everyone for attending today. We will be sending out a copy of the slides and the recording from today. So if you've missed anything or want to, peruse it at your leisure, you'll have access to it. There's also a brief survey that will be included in the email from me. We really appreciate you filling it out. It helps us, with our further workshop programming. And one more time, if you're not familiar with SCORE, we're a nationwide organization that helps businesses from start to exit. We're a nonprofit part of the SBA with 240 chapters around the country. I believe now around that same number, 3 right here in Maine. And here in Maine, we helped start over 560 new businesses last year. And before we wrap up, Christy's looking at the interest form, and it looks like you need to create an account to fill it out.
Yeah, so why don't I just quickly, because I mentioned this a few times, why don't I just quickly go to, let me see if I can share this. Let me quickly go to the business and just show what it looks like for people who might want to see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So if you go onto MTI's website, this will be the homepage, mainetechnology.org. And then you'll see there's this Explore Funding Programs link right here, and it shows all the different forms of programs that MTI has. So again, there's the Business Innovation Funding Program, which is kind of the bulk of what I spoke about. There's also that Maine Entrepreneurial Resource Corps, which is the consulting one. Federal Funding Application Support, that's if you're looking to apply for SBIR, STTR, event sponsorship. Innovation Ecosystem Development, that is a program that's currently closed. This is for partner organizations that are looking to do work in the state. This one is a competition, and the application deadline was a few weeks ago, so this one's not pertinent. And then funding FAQs is just frequently asked questions. But for example, if you go to Business Innovation Funding, this gives you an overview of kind of the criteria, the funding structure, the application process, so a lot of the things I spoke about. And then there's an opportunity to get started on the funding process, and there's this interest form link. I should also mention that you can read more about some of these things. So there's read more about the evaluation process. That is a deeper dive into what we're looking to see. You can read more about funding criteria. But if you're interested in speaking to somebody at MTI, you would go and you'd click interest form. And then you would need to, as Christy mentioned, you will need to create an account. We use a portal called Blackbaud. So you'd continue with email, you'd put in your email, and it'll ask you to enter some high-level information about what your business is doing. And this is just so MTI can kind of prep in advance. Well, so we have a database because we try to maintain a database of everybody we speak to because that's just helpful for our records. And then also in advance of speaking with MTI, we ask you to put in some high-level information so that our investment officers can kind of prepare in advance for the call. But it should not be too time intensive. I think there's 3 or 4 questions that ask you to, write a few sentences. And one other thing I should mention that, in terms of confidentiality, all these initial conversations with MTI are fully confidential. And then even if you go ahead and submit an application to MTI and get funded, the only information that would ever become public is, the fact that your organization got an award, how much funding you received, and maybe the name of your project title and a non-confidential summary that you yourself get to write. But all your application materials, the key information about your innovation, those all remain confidential because we understand that lots of businesses are worried about kind of their secret information getting out there. So we're very protective of confidentiality.
Yeah, sounds similar to the Score Mentor application process too, where it's a quick, easy process where you just write a little bit of info and it's also confidential. So I'm glad to hear. We do have one more question that came up in the chat, asking, could the small business funding be multi-use, for example, pursuing the innovative project, also paying for training to better enhance said project?
Yep, absolutely. So the language we use is, projects that help move innovation forward, but that's very broad. It's very common for us to support a single project that has multiple activities within it. So for example, we've supported projects where one key activity is product development. So you're looking to add some features to your innovation, and another one is marketing. So you're looking to develop marketing materials. And a third one is IP. And a fourth one is training employees on how to use your new innovation. So yes, it can be a multi-component project that has different activities as long as they all can be credibly linked to kind of moving the innovation forward.
Okay, great info there. Well, do we have any other questions? Oh, yes, one more from Sam. How fast is the turnaround between filling out an interest form and hearing back from a advisor and mentor?
Yeah,
Sam, is
assuming
that
this is a
for
question.
Score or is that is that for Score or is that for MTI? For Score, we try to have my name's again Jasper. I'm the client services manager at Score Maine. Probably should have introduced myself more earlier, but I'm the person that places any request that comes into the state of Maine with one of our mentors. I try to have people paired within a business day or two. And by then, the mentor should reach out to you within the day that they have been assigned to you, and you go and schedule an appointment with them from there. And Tom, he also says how long with MTI as well.
Yeah. So the language we say is 5 to 10 business days. That's really just to give us a cushion if somebody's like out on vacation or something. Realistically, it's generally, a few business days. So typically you'd hear from somebody from MTI within, 3 days of applying to set up a call. It varies again, depending on the context, but we try to be relatively fast as well. Maybe not quite as fast as Score, but we try not to have you waiting too long.
We like to be that fast, but again, likewise, sometimes stuff does happen. We are volunteers over here, so I'm the only person getting paid for this process out of us here at Score. So that does, but that doesn't, dissuade you. Please don't dissuade you from the fact that they're here to help and are all very professional with their services and time offered. Cool. Well, if there's any other questions, as I don't mean to wrap us up early, but if we have any others, you can contact us at Score. I'll also include some contact information as well and a way to contact MTI. And like I said, we were recording today, and you'll receive the slides and recording at the shortly after it's available to me. In any case, I do want to hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thanks for coming, and thanks again, Tom, for another great presentation.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was great to see you all. And hopefully some of you might find MTI useful, and please feel free to reach out via the website. Take care all.
Thank you. Everyone have a great day.